When Richard Sterling humiliated a black entrepreneur, he didn't know that this man owned a significant stake in his company. This mistake could destroy his career, but the way Marcus decided to respond would surprise even the most seasoned. Let's start from the beginning. Richard Sterling sat behind the massive wooden desk in his office, surrounded by symbols of wealth and power. Glass walls overlooking the city, shelves filled with expensive books, and a collection of elite alcohol. He waited until his assistant announced Marcus Reed, then gave a curt nod, allowing the entrepreneur to enter. Sterling immediately felt a sense of superiority as he glanced at Marcus, who was dressed in a simple but neat suit. To him, this black businessman was just another contender trying to take a piece of his empire. "You have 10 minutes, Sterling said sharply, not bothering to stand up. "Let's begin." Despite the cold reception, Marcus remained calm. He sat down across from Sterling and began with a brief explanation of his projects, proposing a partnership that could bring profits to both sides. Sterling, meanwhile, didn't even try to hide his boredom. He twirled a pen in his fingers, occasionally casting quick, dismissive glances at Marcus. "Let's be honest, Marcus," Sterling interrupted him. "Your ideas may be good for small projects, but not for our corporation. We operate on a different level. We're not interested in small players." His voice was filled with obvious sarcasm and contempt. Marcus smiled mildly, continuing to listen patiently. But inside, he recognized the familiar bias he had faced before. "I understand that's how you might feel," Marcus replied without showing any offense. "But my proposals are already working in several large companies, and I'm confident yours could greatly benefit from implementing them." Sterling gave him an icy look and then stood up, clearly signaling that the meeting was over. "Thank you for your efforts, Marcus, but we run too serious a business to waste time on such projects," he said in a tone so condescending that it seemed he didn't even consider Marcus a worthy counterpart. Marcus stood up, maintaining his composure. His parting words were calm, but carried an undercurrent of confidence. "Thank you for the meeting, Richard. I'm sure this won't be our last." Sterling barely suppressed a smirk. He couldn't imagine that this black entrepreneur, whom he had just belittled, would soon turn his entire world upside down and make him regret today's meeting. Richard Sterling sat at his desk, barely holding the phone to his ear, as his mind raced to process the lawyer's words. "That's impossible," he finally said slowly. "How could he be a shareholder? Why didn't I know about this earlier?" The lawyer on the other end sighed deeply, aware that the news was far from welcome. "Richard, I was just as surprised. He's not just a shareholder, he's one of the company's largest investors. Marcus Reed owns 25% of the shares through a series of subsidiaries we weren't aware of. His investments have been spread over several years, and he always acted through intermediaries, which is why his name never surfaced." Sterling felt his hands begin to tremble. Yesterday, he had seen Marcus as a minor businessman who could be humiliated without consequence. He thought he was dealing with another small player, as he had put it. But now, the situation had taken a completely different turn. "And now what?" Sterling finally asked, his voice slightly shaky. "What does this mean for us?" "It means that Marcus Reed can influence any major decisions in the company, even to the point of removing you from your position, if he chooses," the lawyer replied, clearly anxious. "Given his stake, his voice carries significant weight on the board of directors. Frankly, if he decides to take action against you, it could create serious problems." Sterling clenched his jaw, realizing how deep in trouble he was. All his attempts to appear as an unassailable leader now seemed laughable. Yesterday's conversation with Marcus flashed in his mind. The cold words, the condescending tone, the dismissive remarks that were now coming back to haunt him. He glanced at the corporate reports scattered across his desk. There it was. The names of shareholders, their percentages, and now the name Reed was no longer just a line in the documents. It had become a symbol of his fear and helplessness. He had always thought he ruled the company with an iron hand, and now he realized he had overlooked the person who could topple him from his throne. "I need to talk to him," Sterling said firmly, his voice regaining some of its usual confidence. Immediately. Yes, I think that's a wise decision, the lawyer cautiously agreed. But be careful. After yesterday's conversation, I'm not sure how he'll respond. Sterling silently ended the call, not waiting for the lawyer to finish speaking, and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. His mind was in chaos, filled with thoughts of how to fix the situation, how to regain control. He didn't want to believe that everything had spiraled out of control due to one misstep, one careless word. Marcus Reed, the man he had humiliated, was now someone who could destroy his empire in an instant. Sterling knew he had to act quickly and find a way to make amends. Richard Sterling spent a sleepless night pondering possible solutions. He needed to meet with Marcus urgently and somehow fix the situation. To his own surprise, he decided to personally invite Marcus to a meeting the next morning. His secretary was astonished by the unusually polite and slightly nervous tone of her boss as he dictated the message. Marcus agreed to the meeting, and by noon they were once again in the same office. But now, the atmosphere was completely different. Sterling was tense, feeling vulnerable. Marcus, on the other hand, entered with a confidence that made Sterling feel small. Marcus, I want to start by admitting that perhaps our discussion yesterday was too hasty, Sterling began, carefully choosing his words. We didn't finish our conversation, and I think we missed an opportunity to discuss the details. Marcus sat across from him, arms crossed over his chest, and nodded, indicating he was ready to listen. But his eyes held a cold certainty that made Sterling visibly uncomfortable. I realize that I may have come across as harsh yesterday, Sterling continued, trying to avoid a direct apology, though his voice grew increasingly nervous. We at the company highly value innovation and are always open to promising projects. Without waiting for him to finish, Marcus calmly interrupted. Richard, I want you to understand something. Yesterday's meeting didn't show me your thoughts on my project. It revealed your true nature. You don't see people for their achievements or ideas. You only see their skin color and status. But this time, you were wrong. Sterling felt a wave of shame wash over him, but he maintained a composed expression. I'm confident that we can find common ground and discuss potential collaborations, he quickly responded, realizing that if he didn't extend an olive branch now, the consequences could be catastrophic. Marcus paused for a moment, locking eyes with Sterling. His gaze held a steely resolve, making Sterling realize that their interaction was no longer a simple business meeting. We'll discuss this at the board meeting, Marcus said, standing up. I'll give you the chance to correct your mistakes, but on our terms, and believe me, I always play the long game. With those words, Marcus left, leaving Sterling alone with the realization that he had lost control of the situation. After his meeting with Marcus, Richard Sterling realized that his world was no longer his alone. A week passed, and the tension only grew. Rumors swirled throughout the company that Marcus was planning to use his influence on the board of directors. For the first time, Sterling felt unsure about his future. He started coming to the office less often, avoiding the watchful eyes of his colleagues, who had long been observing his actions, waiting for his fall. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Friday. It was the day that could determine the future of the company and Sterling himself. He entered the meeting room with a heavy heart. The large oval room was filled with key shareholders and board members who quietly discussed recent events. Marcus Reed was already there, seated at the far end of the table, exuding calm confidence. Sterling immediately noticed that calm, and it terrified him. As the meeting began, the chairman gave the floor to Marcus. Everyone expected his speech, and Sterling could feel the tension rising. Marcus stood up and began speaking firmly and confidently. Friends, I didn't come to this company just as an investor. I believe in its potential and its future. But for us to continue growing and reaching new heights, we need to better recognize the importance of diversity, equality, and fair treatment of every person in this company. Sterling sat on edge. He knew this was not just a business speech, but a direct address to his own personal failings. I believe we need a new approach to leadership, Marcus continued, scanning the room but lingering his gaze on Sterling. An approach that doesn't overlook people based on their appearance or status. Leadership founded on mutual respect and equal opportunities for everyone. Many shareholders nodded in agreement. Sterling felt his body tense, bracing for the worst, the loss of his position. But then something unexpected happened. Marcus paused and changed his tone. However, I believe people can change, and I'm willing to give this company a chance to show that it can keep up with the times. Therefore, I propose a collaboration. I'm ready to implement my projects, which will bring significant profit, but on the condition that the company's leadership changes its approach. The room fell into silence. Sterling looked at Marcus, unable to believe his ears. Instead of overthrowing him, Marcus offered a chance to make things right. This proposal was not only unexpected, but also a lifeline. Marcus had given Sterling the opportunity to prove that he could change and lead the company forward. This isn't just a business deal, Marcus added, addressing Sterling directly now. It's a chance to show that we can change not only the company, but also our views and our principles. The board of directors, impressed by Marcus's proposal, unanimously voted in favor of his project. This meant that Marcus would gain significant influence over the company's strategy, but it also meant that Sterling had been given a second chance. He could continue his leadership, but now under the close watch of the board and Marcus. After the meeting, as everyone was leaving, Sterling approached Marcus. Their eyes met and Sterling extended his hand. "I'm grateful for this chance, Marcus," he said, his voice calm, but carrying a newfound sincerity. "I don't take words lightly. I truly intend to change my approach." Marcus firmly shook his hand but maintained a serious expression. "Don't do it for me, Richard. Do it for yourself and for the company. We both know that change starts with recognizing your mistakes." With those words, they parted ways, and Sterling knew that a difficult road lay ahead. This day had become a turning point in his life. He realized that his old methods no longer worked, and now he would have to prove his right to leadership not only through success, but through fair treatment of everyone around him. It was a new challenge and Sterling accepted it.